once used to say that the craziest idea in a faculty lounge takes about 2 years to be implemented in the White House. So it's very influential. There's too many people going to four-year colleges and they're not learning anything. We have 1.7 trillion in debt. And so the university is very culpable because we have this problem now where we went from 2.1 fertility down to 1.6. It was catastrophic in 25 years. So we've got this whole generation of young people, primarily also male young people, who they're not getting married, they're not buying houses, they're not having children. And I have them in my own family and I talk to them. How did you get 150,000 niece or nephew? And the majors that they go 3 units here, 6 units here, 5 units here, and they consume their 20s because of this myth of the 4-year degree. And then you have these universities and you say to them, and I've said this to a lot of administrators, why don't you just tell, when I buy a car, I'm told exactly what the monthly payment is, what the total cost is, and am I aware of all the ins and outs? So I have a 17-page thing to fill out. Would you just tell the student when they take these loans, what is the average compensation of a sociology major, a psych major, a classics major, whatever it is, just tell them. Tell them how much the interest will cost them and what is the price per unit in dollars so that they can make a decision and not just fob it off on a guaranteed loan. And then would you also pledge your endowment, get the government out, just pledge it. If you're Stanford University and you have a $40 billion endowment, why don't you just tell the students that they'll have the student loans, but you are on your responsibility when they default? And maybe if that happened, you would offer courses that were relevant and the students, you would be very critical of the faculty who couldn't teach, etc. And then another thing, until recently we had SATs, and the premise of the SAT was the GPA cannot be trusted because there's such a wide disparity in the quality of high school. So an A from my high school, Salma High School, where I graduated, is not really an A compared to Palo Alto High School. And that was true. So therefore I had to take the SAT. Why don't we have an SAT in the back end? Because I guarantee you that where Stanford is today and watching it, they are not turning students out like Hillsdale College. I teach at both. Yeah. 20 years ago, the Stanford student was far better prepared and educated and came in, not now. And if you had an SAT that said everybody who needs a BA has to get, 85% of 520 on the SAT, you would be surprised how much they hate that idea. And because they don't want any accountability, that either they haven't taught people to improve in the skills they said were necessary to take their courses. And I'll just finish this with, I had a guy in Silicon Valley last year, I gave a lecture and he came up to me and I said, at some point their reputations are going to suffer, these four-year colleges, because they're watered down the curriculum and it's DEI. And he said, where have you been, Victor? He said, in the last 3 years, Stanford University let in 20% white students. We don't care what color they are. But to get that ratio, they had to exclude people that were brilliant. So they rejected 70% of those who had a perfect SAT, even though it was was a choice. They sent it in, and that became a mark of vulnerability. It's like 0.11% of the SAT get perfect scores. Stanford refused 60 or 70% of them that applied. So then he said, and then you have the therapeutic culture. So I said, what are you getting at? He said, when we're in Silicon Valley and we have a choice now in 2023 to hire somebody from Stanford, whether it's public relations or coding or Texas A&M, Georgia Tech, we will take them any day. And I'd say, are you serious? He said, yes, because two things, they're better trained, and the first thing they do not do is go to our HR department and complain. Your students, they're not as competitive. They your faculty, to accommodate the new student body, had to either water down the courses, inflate the grades, but accommodate the fact that they are letting in students by their own admission did not fit the requirements that they used to preach to us were absolutely necessary. Or as he put it, in 1998, these guys would come up to us and say, you know what? It's a very rare person that can get into Stanford University. And once they get in here, we give them the toughest classes. And when they go out there, these guys are brilliant, they're trained. And so then he says to me, well, if that was true, and now they admit that they've thrown out the SAT, then they're admitting they're letting people in that can't do the curriculum on the books that they said was necessary to ensure their prestige. So why would we trust them anymore? And in fact, and that's what's happening to Harvard. Yale. 80% of the grades at Yale were A's. So I think what you're saying is, not only is the demographic shrinking, there's fewer students, but the costs are going up above the rate of inflation. The students are not getting any means to pay back the loans, and the universities are no longer meritocratic. And that's even going into medical school, law school, business school. And so a lot of people are saying, I want my child to go get skills. I want him to go to a trade school. I want him to go to a community college. And the elite now, believe it or not, I get a call twice a week. Victor, I'm not going to send my kid to Harvard, Yale, where I went, or Stanford. Is it Hillsdale? Is it Pepperdine? Is it St. Thomas Aquinas? Where do I send my child? Or do I send them to University of Oklahoma State? And so I'm very confident that there's a revolutionary movement in education to get rid of this toxic, I have a bunch of letters after my name, therefore I'm educated, therefore I'm an expert. And what the universities have done is almost criminal to put us, the taxpayers, on a $1.7 trillion exposure so they can raise their rates of tuition above the rate of inflation, and they're not accountable, and their students they're not competitive compared to other universities. The problem is not with the middle and upper middle classes, it's with the credentialed elite. And I'm not confident about them, but I think we have to hold them to account in the media and the university especially. So I think we'll see what happens in November, and the Republicans have a lot of problems too, but we'll see. It's not so much about Trump or Harris, it's more or less after 233 years, we're not going to call the country a failure and it's racist, systematically unfair, it's exploitive, and we're going to tear it apart. We're not going to do that. Sorry. If you don't like it, that's the way it's going to be. We're going to vote, and we're not perfect, but we don't have to be perfect to be good, and we're better than the alternative, and for that's good enough. And we're going to press on. That's the attitude. And I think it'll prevail.
Victor Davis Hanson built his mind by thinking deeply and questioning everything. If you want to do the same, hit subscribe and let's go deeper together.